from, is it on? I think it's on, yes. November 8th, 2022. Remember, it's election day. If you haven't already voted and you are online, you should leave your screen and go vote now. And if you're in our room, you can wait till your event goes by, but get there before 7 o'clock. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. First thing on our agenda today is approval of the agenda. Does anyone have a motion to approve the agenda? We don't have any additions to the agenda? Thank you.
Move we approve the agenda as presented.
Dr. Bandry, any second? Jim seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Next on the agenda is recognitions and presentations with Ms. Kamian. Where are you? There she is.
Good evening. Staff members are nominated by colleagues to receive a You Make a Difference Award for their support of students and the mission of Salina Public Schools. Board of Education members surprise recipients during their workday with a lapel pin and a handwritten note. Juan Maldonado, English as a second language teacher, South High School. Juan is a great role model of how to successfully use two languages in schools. With another teacher, he leads the International Cultures Club, manifesting belonging and supporting students' ideas to share their cultures with the greater student body. Thank you for making a difference, Juan. Teresa Heidi, Administrative Assistant at South High School. Teresa's positivity and poise support excellence in the South High School office. Sharing her patient expertise when office personnel change, she adjusts her schedule to cover duties and ensure proper training and assistance. She helps make South High a welcoming environment. Thank you for making a difference, Teresa. Corey Atchison, bus driver, Meadowlark Ridge. Corey sets the tone every morning and afternoon for students on his bus. His caring manner is evident as he keeps children safe and orderly, often sharing a joke or kind word with his students. When a lunchbox was left on the bus, he personally returned it a half hour later. Thank you, Corey, for making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the Challenge Award to be presented by our State School Board member, Dina Horst.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I didn't think we were ever going to find a date that I could do this myself. So it seems like we meet on the same day you do. And tonight is a little bit bittersweet, as this is likely the last time I will be presenting awards in my home district because of redistricting that takes effect in January. But I'd like to thank you for the honor of serving you. Please know that the boundaries of my district may have changed, but those boundaries won't keep me from continuing to care about the USD 305 staff and students. So, on with the show. As hopefully all of the USD 305 teachers know, the Kansas State Board of Education's vision for Kansas education is that Kansas will lead the world in the success of each student. We know that our schools are doing extraordinary work every day for the students of Kansas. So much like President Kennedy, more than 50 years ago, delivered his famous "We choose to go to the moon" speech, we believe that this goal will help us organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, whether you are a student or a staff member. We also know that parents, grandparents, and community members who support the education of Cottonwood Elementary School students are vital to their success as well. So it's my honor to be here tonight to recognize and celebrate one of the great success stories in our state. Cottonwood Elementary School staff members are making a real difference for our most at-risk student populations. As a retired teacher, I know the hard work and commitment it takes to ensure all students learn all they can. Because of that knowledge, I am extremely proud and pleased to honor Cottonwood Elementary School with a 2021 Challenge Award. Yes, 2021. One of just 11 given in the State Board of Education District 6. This award recognizes only the top 100 schools, and that's all schools, elementary, middle, and high school, for their outstanding achievement and uncommon accomplishment based on assessment results, attendance, high school graduation rate, and other demographic information. I'd like to take just a moment, because many of you are probably your organizations you belong to as involved in education, but you may not know that they're a part of this task force, and you can ask me later, and I will confirm whether they are or not. But members of the Confidence in Kansas Public Education Task Force, I'd like for us all to recognize them with applause for their vision in not only creating this award, but also for their ongoing work to ensure that we yearly recognize the hard work of our teachers, our administrators, and our students. So, during the past 16 years since this award was created, we have seen significant improvement in the performance of Kansas students in reading and math. But particularly because of the pandemic, we knew this before that occurred, but we know there's still a lot more work to be done. And Kansas is blessed with extraordinary educators and administrators whose leadership guides our students to achieve more than they themselves believe is possible. And the Salina School District is a superb example of that fact. So if I might call the Cottonwood staff maybe to even come forward. Wow. Are you all here tonight? Just almost. There's quite a few of you. Teachers, please keep setting high expectations for your students. Keep providing the support they need to be successful. And keep believing that Kansans can lead the world in the success of each student. And as you do that work, please know you have the support and gratitude of everyone on the state board and at the state board or the State Department of Education. And to your students, I don't see any of them here tonight, but I hope you will encourage them to keep working hard to learn all they can, because that will benefit them as they progress through their education endeavors. And all the while, remembering that Kansas students can lead the world. And also, thank you, members of the Salina Board of Education, Superintendent Exline, Principal Griffiths. I know your wife. You'd think I could say your last name right. I want to thank you for your excellent leadership, because without that occurring, this award would not occur either. And I'd like to I was inviting the superintendent and the principal to say a few words, but I think the superintendent has deferred to the principal. So.
And I will defer to my teachers. So Mr. Henderson, they didn't know. It is an honor and a privilege to work for this district. And it's an honor and a privilege to lead Cottonwood Elementary. Been a principal for a long time, and you quickly learn as a principal that it's not about me. It's about the staff right here. The hard work that they put in every day with our students. Every day is not a great day, but they come in every morning with a smile, knowing that they will make a difference for our students. So on behalf of the students, our teachers, and our parents, we thank you for this award, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to get this tonight. Thank you.
So I present this award, this challenge award, to Cottonwood Elementary. And thank you very much. Congratulations, it's well deserved. And those of you who are staff members and your students, I know the hard work that you do to make Salina School District great, and that entails making Kansas great, Kansas education great. And I hope you will give yourselves a pat on the back, and that you will yell just as loudly as you do at a ball game, because you are academic rock stars.
Cottonwood staff, would you come and let the board congratulate you? It's okay. Okay. Good job. Good job. Good job. Okay, good. Congratulations. Congratulations. Thank you. Good job. Thank you so much. Good job. Way to go. We're proud of you. Proud of you. Congratulations. Congratulations. Way to go. Do we need another photograph of the teachers, or are you good with the photographs now? We could have them go in the back. They would like to take a photograph. Oh, up here? What were you saying? Well, sorry. Yeah, she's in the. Okay. And I'm also going to ask, Mr. Gardner has an announcement that has to do with the Cottonwood staff and students. So while, maybe when they're done with their photographs, they can listen. Okay, Mr. Gardner, go ahead.
I will try to keep this as brief as possible. It's amazing how, not to bring religion in, but how God seems to work things out. A full 2 Mondays ago, possibly, the kids from Cottonwood read a proclamation at the city commission meeting. And I happened to be there. And I must tell you that it was one of the most fulfilling times to watch some kids do something that weren't my own. I was extremely impressed with the way they presented themselves, the way they carried themselves, the way they articulated their words. It's a learned behavior. And what those young kids have learned is nothing but a reflection of that staff at Cottonwood. And Cottonwood is an example. It's a sampling of USD 305. And oftentimes we give our remarks at the end when everybody's left the room. And I just wanted to let you know while everybody's in the room how extremely proud I am of that particular moment and this district. There's a lot of things going on right now. And that was a shining moment in a dark period. And that's throughout this nation. And so I can't do anything but commend the staff and those kids for the way they presented themselves and commanded themselves in a room full of adults. The adults could have took some notes from those kids. So I just wanted to let you know how extremely proud I am of you and what you've done, what you're doing, and where you're taking those kids and USD 305. I just want to let you know your hard work has not gone unnoticed.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go on to the next item on our agenda, which is Jennifer Gordon, Dr. Jennifer Gordon, speaking about the Dunbar School alumni and the anniversary of Dunbar School.
I need to give a pitch also to Cottonwood. My grandchildren went there years ago, so I'm proud of them also. Good evening. I'm very happy to be here, Superintendent, and also President Zimmerman, to just give you a couple of minutes on Dunbar School. On November 17th, Dunbar School will be 100 years old. It is at 509 East Elm. And if you go to the public library and drive east, you would run into it. And we want you to know that the Dunbar School Alumni Association decided at the beginning of this year that instead of planning a reunion, which we do every 3 or 4 years, we would celebrate Dunbar School, the staff that work there, and the alumni that are still with us. So we are on the 19th of November having a day of festivities. It will start with a tour of Dunbar School thanks to St. Francis Ministries, who have been awesome throughout the years in supporting our reunions. So if you'd like to go in and peek in the building, that would be a good time to do that. We are celebrating with the unveiling of a wonderful plaque that Superintendent Exline has supported us in having presented there. And we also have a few other items that we're going to present to various entities here in Salina. If you have read any of the information that we gave you, you'll know that Dunbar School was a segregated school that opened again in 1922. It was at the, I should say, the school board was given the opportunity to build another school for students of color in Salina because Salina became a first-class city because they had a population of 15,000. So an elementary school level was approved to segregate in this state at that time. It was based on some early legislation that was passed in, I should say, mid and late 1800s. And it was kind of the move nationwide to do this. Prior to that, the schools were integrated here in Salina. So we have tried to keep the legacy of Dunbar alive over the years, and we thought that this would be a great opportunity to not only educate some of our community, but educate the community at large. We are having as you can see, a program in the afternoon, and if you want to know a little more history, that'll be presented there. But you can also go to our website, and we have quite a bit of information up on the website there, www.dunbarschoolsalina.com. I don't have anything else that I want to add because I know I just had a few minutes, but I'll take questions if any of you have questions for me.
No questions tonight, ma'am, but just appreciate the work and leadership to keep this legacy alive.
Thank you
It's
so
so
much.
important, I think. So
It
thank
is,
you.
it is. Thank you so, so much.
And I got to hear your presentation at the library, at the museum last week, and it was interesting to me that this was built as really a state-of-the-art school, but then it only had students in it for 35 years, and so then it went off to be something other than a school.
Yes,
Those-
as you know, Brownby Board, was in full swing at that time too, and parents were deciding to send, if they had the opportunity to send their students to their neighborhood schools, that's where they chose. So enrollment had also dwindled during that late 1950s. Middle was 1955. And so at that time, the last principal, some of you may remember Robert C. Caldwell was the last principal at Dunbar School. He later became mayor of Salina, and it has always been a stellar, outstanding educator in our community and someone we value so much. And so we're excited that his daughter will be coming to share some of this weekend with us. So thank you so much for giving me this time, and I hope to see some of you there, and it's going to be a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda items, which include the minutes of the October 11th, 2022 regular meeting, personnel report, financial reports, including the October bills list, the September treasurer's report, September investment report, September journal entries, to approve encumbrance listings, including to Vertive in the amount of $32,919.98 for the renewal of existing service contracts for the uninterrupted power supply, power and battery services, to Converge One in the amount of $31,413.14 for the purchase of core routing switches at Memorial Hall, to Eagle Technologies in the amount of $72,416.45 for the renewal of licensing upgrades and support for the backup and restore system, to Scott Rice for the purchase of lunchroom tables for Meadowlark, Schilling, and Lakewood in the amount of $228,723.85, To approve a gift from Salina Baseball Enterprises in the amount of $69,000 to pay for construction options at the South High School softball complex. To approve Stewart Elementary's request to apply for a grant with the Greater Salina Community Foundation in the amount of $5,500 to install a peaceful playground. To approve food service request to apply for a grant with the Kansas State Department of Education, Child Nutrition and Wellness for a new mixer at South High at an estimated cost of $33,540. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda items? Mr. Gardner moved. Do I have a second? Ms. Casso seconds. Any discussion? I am curious, is that one of the tables is that a sample of those tables in the back? Maybe you're going to talk about that later, but go ahead.
It is a sample. There's no plan to have a talk. I guess after the board meeting, I'll give you a demo if you want to stick around.
All right, I noticed it said tigers on the top of it, so I bet it's not for,
We stole it. It's
okay, thank you. I also had a question about the peaceful playground. Can somebody describe the peaceful playground that they're getting they are hoping to get through a grant at Stewart Elementary?
So the Peaceful Playground is actually templates that you can paint onto sidewalks and blacktops, and it's different games that students can play. And so one might be a great big huge United States map, and so, but interactive kinds of things that can be painted on the ground that students can participate with during recess. Hughesner has some of these already. And there is a website, if you're interested in looking at peaceful playgrounds, you can see the kinds of activities that are available that can be painted there. And anyway, just a neat way to add extra play spaces on a playground.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Then, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Next on the agenda is the public forum. I don't believe we have any requests for speaking at the public forum. So we will go on to the action agenda with Ms. Wright talking about board team for negotiations, discussion with certified personnel.
It's that time of year when we start planning for negotiations with our certified personnel. And as you all, I think at this point are familiar with, we need 2 members for you to appoint for negotiations team this year.
Thank you. And I had discussed this with some of our members, Mr. Grant and Mr. Fletcher, right? Okay. Would somebody nominate them unless someone else wants that job?
I'm happy to nominate Mr. Fletcher and Mr. Grant to serve on the negotiations personnel.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Gabe Grant and Jim Fletcher be our negotiating team members. Any discussion? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Thank you. Ms. Wright.
Next we would like to request that you appoint 2 members to participate in Meet and Confer, on the Meet and Confer team, which is a similar process with classified staff that we engage in about their terms of employment and work conditions each spring.
Thank you. And I did also talk I emailed Bonnie Schamberger about this, didn't I? I did, I returned it. Yes. Yes, I was pretty sure that's right. Yes, and Dr. Bandry, right? Yes. Do I hear nominations for those?
Madam President, I would nominate Ms. Schamberger and Dr. Bandry for Meet and Confer.
Second, do I hear a second? Dana Casso, seconds. Any discussion on that? Then all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is discussion agenda, which my computer is having trouble scooting down to, but, okay, there we are. We're going to talk about chronic absenteeism. Ms. Rector.
Thank you. And I have Jody Craddock-Iceland with me, who is the Director of Support Services. She is going to join in this presentation. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of attendance in our schools and talk a little bit about chronic absenteeism and provide some definitions and some general background knowledge on how we look at attendance and how we think through attendance. And so, first of all, I just kind of want to put the why of why we are paying attention to attendance and why attendance matters so much. And so when we look and talk about attendance, one of the things that our state looks at is called chronic absenteeism. And I'll define that a little bit more later. But basically what chronic absenteeism means is that when a student misses more than 10% of the school year. And so as we look at that, and what research shows is that students that have missed that are chronically absent each year that they're in school, they actually lose an entire year of schooling by the time they go through the 12th grade. And so when we think about the impact of chronic absenteeism year after year on students, that has a great impact on their learning. We also recognize that when students are absent, when they are chronically absent, they do not perform as well as their peers. And actually, we looked this summer at some of our subgroup data, and we compared students that were chronically absent and students that were not chronically absent for different subgroups. And in every single subgroup, we saw that students that were chronically absent performed not as well as their academic peers. Another aspect of why attendance matters so much is that when you have chronic absenteeism in those very early stages of learning, and when students are not in school, if they are not mastering reading by the 3rd grade, that really does impact their educational journey for the rest of their school career. We know that, up to 3rd grade, they're really learning to read, and then past 3rd grade, they're kind of reading to learn. And so students that haven't mastered that reading by that 3rd grade, that's a pivotal aspect to kind of their educational journey. And so we want to make sure that students are there each and every day so we can provide that reading instruction as we need to. And then when we think about irregular attendance, another kind of indicator of students that when we look at chronic absenteeism is that at the high school level, it is one of the warning signs for students not being on track to graduate. And so we know that irregular attendance impacts our graduation rates and impacts, really that student's ability to connect with the school and also with their future. One of the things that the Kansas State Department of Education has really put an emphasis on chronic absenteeism over the last few years. We know that we've had, some other things happening in our most recent past with COVID and some of the things that are, kept us maybe from focusing on that attendance aspect. But we have really kind of recharged ourselves and be thinking again about how do we move forward looking at that chronic absenteeism and reinforcing that attendance matters. One of the visuals that they provided from Attendance Works is this droplet of water. And so when you see a student that misses class, that really has this effect all across the organization. And so for that individual students, they're missing the ability to build relationships and they're missing instruction. They're missing the very reason why they go to school each and every day. And it impacts other students. And so it makes it more difficult for them to build relationships with their students, with the adults in the school, and then also just, that reteaching aspect that will impact the school. Then you think about, especially at high school, when students aren't there, when they're working together on team projects, when they have things, when they're focused on, how do we work together and build those skills of collaboration and so forth. Students missing, that impacts the other students in that group. Teachers needing to do the reteaching, making sure that they're, doing the very best job they can to help that student catch up when they have missed from school. That impacts, the ability that they can do to the daily instruction that we need in our schools. And then also just kind of the impact within a school district. When you think about the time that's spent with counselors and social workers and administrators and the resources that are needed to help students when they are not in school, it does have that ripple effect across the entire organization. And so over the last couple months, we have really been looking at and thinking about how can we refocus ourselves on that attendance aspect. We have some things behind us in the sense of, knowing that our students are able to be in school more often now that as we go forward this school year. And so we really want to put that attention there and also kind of rebuild some of the habits that we know that we need to have for our students. Not only does it impact individual students, but really, attendance is the law. And so we do have compulsory attendance here in the state of Kansas. And so students need to be in school when basically at that 7-year-old mark. And we get our students way before then, and we want them as soon as we can get them. But, when you look, students must be in school when they reach the age of 7, and they are required to stay in school until they are 18. And so, that is, students are required to attend. And so we have compulsory attendance. And then so there's some guidelines there that kind of align with that compulsory attendance. When we think about attendance, I did want to go ahead and define some of the different kinds of absences that we might see, because we know that, there are some students that have perfect attendance and they're there each and every day, but really we want students that, when our students are there, we want them to be able to engage fully. And so when we think about excused absences, sometimes students need to be gone because they're sick. And what we would say is that we continue to support families keeping their children home when they are not healthy enough to be at school. And so it's better for a student to be home 1 or 2 days sick than to come to school for 3 or 4 days not feeling well and not being able to engage. So by all means, do we continue to support families when their student needs to be home because they are ill. Also, there's times when there are emergencies that happen, when there may be a loss of a loved one. All kinds of things cause a student not to be in school. And what we would expect is that there's going to be times when students are absent. And so being absent a few times here and there, that's going to be expected. That's just kind of how life is. And so we would call those excused absences when the parents are communicating with the school. We know why they're ill, or we know why they're absent, and so we have that reason. We know where our students are at. We would look at unexcused absences as times when there's not communication between the guardian or the parent and the school. We haven't heard from that parent for a few days. We don't know where that student is. And so that could be a time when we would see an unexcused absence. Another time when we would say that an absence is unexcused, the state uses the term inexcusable absent. And that basically is a time when, for all, basically, I don't want to say reasonable, because when we think about reasonable, there's lots of reasons why a student might not be in school. But when we think about patterns of behavior and so forth, an absence for an illness, a short-term illness, or for emergency and so forth, when those happen kind of in isolation, that makes sense. But when we see a pattern of absence, when they are sick and we don't have a mechanism to be able to show that why they are sick, or if we see that there's just reason after reason why a student is not in school, that might mean that that's an inexcusable absence, and so it would be considered an unexcused absence. If a student is absent because of a school-related situation, a field trip, an athletic event, going to perform, for state band, those would be absences that are related to the school environment and are actually giving them a chance to learn in a different capacity. Those absences don't count against students for absenteeism. And so what we have done this school year is we've really looked at some of our codes for absences and tried to really kind of step back and make those codes a little bit easier to understand at the school level and then also at the parent level. And so really what we're looking at is that we want students to be in school, and when students are absent, depending upon the reason, they may be coded kind of in our system as excused, unexcused, or school-related. And so that kind of brings me to be able to, reason why I wanted to define unexcused and excused absences. I think in the past, when we talked about school attendance, one of the things that we were focused on was truancy. And truancy is a measure of unexcused absences. Chronic absenteeism is defined by the State Department of Education as when students are absent for 10% or more of the time for both excused and unexcused absences. And so even though we may know where a student is and that the reason why they're not in school is an excusable reason, it still counts in that overall big picture of the student is not in school. And so what the state looks at is that they identify that when students are not in school for whatever reason, then we do believe that that impacts the learning. For students that are gone because of school-related activities, there's all kinds of mechanisms in the schools to be able to make sure that they get their work ahead of time. They have other kinds of opportunities working with their, teacher or their coaches and so forth to make sure that those absences, we believe that the reason for them to be absent is greater than, the actual absence in school, and we have mechanisms for them to make up that work. But when we think about absenteeism and chronic absenteeism, it's excused and unexcused. And we haven't really spent a lot of time with our parents or even with our schools thinking about it from that lens. And when you start to think about it from that lens, then it really does make us have a different conversation. And one of the reasons that we wanted to have this conversation is because when you start putting the numbers together, the example that we have here is that when a student misses as few as 2 days per month for each month of school year is described as being chronically absent. So in a school year, what that would mean is that student has missed 18 to 20 days of school. And so you kind of let that weigh on you just a little bit. 20 days of school is 4 weeks of school by the end of the school year that student has missed if they're identified as being chronically absent at the end of the year. Right now, we have students that, the number of days most students have been in school is 60 days. And so if a student has already missed more than 6 days of school, at this point in time, they would be considered chronically absent. And so one of the things that we're doing as a district is instead of kind of waiting until the end to look at that chronic absenteeism, we're really putting more emphasis on looking at it all the way along. Because a student that is chronically absent now and has missed 6 days of school, if we can put things into place to keep them from missing additional school, then we know that that helps keep the student on track and it helps kind of build those habits that we need for our students to be in school. So our focus this year really is on chronic absenteeism, and we're really having lots of conversations about how to look and how to communicate with families differently. And so we'll provide some more of that information at the end. And so why does this matter? Just recently, we had an article that came out that talked about the 21 school year. So we dug into a little bit deeper and are starting to look at our 22 school year data. So the 21-20 school year, the one that just ended, some of this data doesn't get finalized until January, but we went ahead and looked at our 21 and 22 chronic absenteeism data. And when you sit and let this kind of weigh on you just a little bit, we know that we've had students out last year that were out for multiple days with no fault of theirs, that they had to be quarantined for the 10 days because of COVID. We had a lot of stipulations in there that we were looking at students that were out of school. And so it makes sense that our chronic absentee number has increased, but we also want to make sure that we don't continue to see it increase and that we put things into place to help it decrease. And so last year, 32% of our students missed 10% or more of the school year. So that means that we had over 2,000 students that missed over 18 days of school. When you think about that from the elementary perspective and thinking of it from that kindergarten, first, second grade, and how critical that those learning experiences are to being able to master reading. Those are times we need students in school each and every day as much as we can. Middle school, those pivotal years of making that transition to high school. And then at high school, you look at that number, 42% of our students at high school were absent over 18 days. And so, we had opportunities in our schools to try to meet the needs of our students as best we could, when they were home because of COVID or when there was illnesses in the home. But some of these are not just from illnesses. Some of these are from other kinds of choices that families can make and that students make. And so what we want to do is educate our families to make sure that they're thinking about those choices of when students are not in school and why we need them in school. But I wanted to kind of share that chronic absenteeism data with you. So chronic absenteeism, unexcused or excused, they've been absent 10% or more of the school year at that point in time. Truancy, which is really where we had kind of put a lot of our energies and efforts before, was really when the student is inexcusably absent or that unexcused absent. And so truancy does have statute by law that when a student has missed 3 consecutive school days, they have been absent for 5 school days in any semester or 7 school days during the school year, then that student, if they were unexcused absences, so they were inexcusably absent, then that student would be considered truant. And we have had, for many, many years, we've had systems in our community, in our district, that looked at truancy. But truancy really is a small number of our students. When we step back and we look at chronic absenteeism, that's a much larger number. And as we think about how we, want to make sure that we give students the very best opportunities to be successful. And one of those opportunities is making sure that we are focused on attendance and working with our families to have students in school each and every day. So to give you a little bit of background of some of the things that we're doing as a district to look at this differently is that before, all of our schools, every single year up until this year, had always had truancy meetings, and we talked about the truancy process. We really shifted those conversations this year, and we went out as a team to meet with, Jody and I went out and met with every single building and met with their teams to talk about the attendance support process and some of the changes that we wanted to put into place this year. And so some of it looks familiar in the sense of kind of common things that they have done in the past. When we think about how we support families, you kind of support at that lowest level of intervention. And then as you see chronic absenteeism increase, you would put in more intervention as you see that students are having more and more difficulty being at school. So that very first part of this is just that if students are considered chronically absent, the school sends a letter, an absenteeism information letter that has some facts about why they should be in school, and just kind of brings it to the attention of the parent. Do they recognize how much school that their student has missed? And please know that whenever a student has missed school and the parent hasn't called, the school always contacts them. The school has conversations. So it's always constantly happening. But sometimes, just that reminder. You know what, my student has been gone quite a bit. Can I make my appointments at a different time? Can I do some other actions as a family to make sure my student is there? So a general letter goes out. If we still see a continued amount of absenteeism, so as the student kind of approaches that 15 to 19% chronically absent, then that school is making a parent contact either by the social worker or by a principal or by the counselor or by someone that's on their kind of attendance team to have a little bit deeper conversation with the family. Are there things that the school can partner with them on to help get that student into school and see what are some of the barriers or what are some of the reasons why the student is not attending. If we continue to see that, we need to provide even more support for this family. If a student is 20% or higher chronically absent, then what we would see is that the building would have a support meeting with the student. And so they would meet with the family, they would meet with the student, and kind of depending upon the age of the student, kind of brainstorm, what do we need to have in place for this student? And so oftentimes, that is kind of where our process kind of stopped as a district, and then we kind of went into this truancy realm that was really a little bit more punitive and so forth. What we have found and what the research shows is those punitives or consequence kinds of actions are not as helpful to families as really sitting down and working collaboratively with them to identify how can we support this family and how can we identify kind of that root cause of why that student is not there. And so after that building has met with the family and the student, they monitor, what they decided on, the interventions. It may be that they look at transportation issues. It may be that, they have conversations about patterns of, sleep patterns, turning off that phone at 10 p.m. instead of 2 a.m., what are some of those things that they can do? And so if we see that that is working, then that school feels good. They continue to communicate, continue to monitor. But if we find that we're still seeing that chronic absenteeism is increasing, this is kind of this new aspect that we have put into our place, is that we're going to have kind of a district support process team. And so we actually have a couple students that we will be meeting with families very soon to kind of go to this next level. And so looking at it from chronically absenteeism, we've never done that before. And so this is where the district team may be a little bit more neutral partner in this. It may be, we bring in maybe a community agency that may have already worked with the student family at the building level, kind of bring it back together to say, okay, the things that we're trying are not working. Are there barriers or aversions or kind of disengagements that really didn't come out in that building meeting, that might come out more with that more neutral meeting, or really sometimes just to also show the seriousness of needing to be in school and looking at all of that data. There will be times, though, that we have students that really are probably looking at more of that truant aspect. And that's where oftentimes you have families that no matter what work has happened at the school, there's other issues going on that really is more than maybe what the school can support or what community agencies support. And so sometimes we need that kind of that stronger support from the DCF, so the Department of Children and Families. And there's a truancy review board that we have in our community that has volunteers that meet with families, usually families of students that are under 16, or we have truancy court that may be there for students usually over 16 or for families. That aspect is really when they're truant by law, when they're unexcused, we don't know why they haven't been in school, or there's kind of the pattern of behavior is there's really no rationale for why they're gone. And so as we work this year, we're going to be looking at it from this different lens and making adjustments and trying to say, okay, how can we look at data differently and how can we work with families differently? One of the things that the buildings now have at their fingertips that they didn't have before is that each week we provide a spreadsheet to them that shows exactly what percentage.
We want families to know that it is important that every child is at school each and every day, all day. Some of the ways we have communicated out is by stressing attendance during enrollment, providing talking points to teachers during conferences, and sending out a district letter to families on the importance of attendance. We participated in an interview with the Salina Journal, and we provided a social media flyer, such as the one that's posted above. This flyer is a good example of the information we are providing to families. We want families to have access to research on why attendance matters, such as the Did You Know? Tardies and absences equaled missed learning opportunities and social emotional experiences. Missing school can make it harder to build relationships and develop routines. Students can fall behind if they miss just 1 or 2 days every few weeks. In addition, we wanted to provide tips on how to help reduce absenteeism, such as what can you do? Develop backup plans for getting to school if something comes up, schedule appointments and trips when school isn't in session, and talk about the importance of being at school every day. It is important to us, and we want families to know that we are here to support them each and every day.
So we take any questions?
I have several.
Dana.
How do you count for somebody missing an hour? I mean, you really need to get in to see the eye doctor, and that's the only time they have. So how are you guys counting that?
That would be an excused absence. And so when a family needs to make an appointment to go see a doctor, sometimes you just can't get an appointment after school or before school, and so that student would be absent. And so really what we're looking at is the totality of absences. And so an absence here or there for a doctor's appointment, something like that, then yes, it would count as an absence, but we really don't see a pattern of behavior where we're worried about chronic absenteeism. And so there are going to be some students that actually will be chronically absent their entire probably school career because they're medically fragile, they miss a lot of school. We know why they're missing school. We've worked with the family to get things put into place that we always have their assignments and their materials available for them. And so, so there's things that we do put into place, but it would be considered an absence just like it always has been. And so it would be considered an excused absence. And just to kind of clarify, chronic absenteeism has been something that the state has looked at for many years. Where we had not done is necessarily looked at it from absenteeism from that lens. We were focused more on the truancy lens, but really what we find is we need to be focused on that chronic absenteeism lens when you start to look at the numbers of chronic absenteeism we have.
So is there not a way to say, well, yeah, they have an excused absence for an hour compared to a day?
Oh,
to me, those
yes.
are two very different
I'm sorry, I
things.
didn't understand the
Yeah.
question. So one of the things that we did this year, and one of the things that we really looked at how we put things into Skyward, so for a student that's in high school or middle school, the only time that it's going to count against them is that hour. And so for that student, they're not missing a whole day of school, they're just missing that 50 minutes. And so it would be counted as that minute. So anytime a student is entered absent in Skyward, it is able to say how much of the day is that, and then that is only the portion of the day that is absent. So probably something I probably should have clarified is that we actually have students that have been gone 2.3 days or 3.7 days, because it's those little increments. So what we would do is we would encourage a family, you know what, if you're gone for a 10 o'clock appointment, please come back. Don't take the whole day. Or can you put that at the end of the school day? So those would be the kinds of conversations that we would have. And then also at elementary, we revamped how we look at attendance in elementary to make sure that, you know what, before they really did look kind of a half day or a full day. We really are looking at that now kind of in smaller chunks, and we'll continue to refine that process as we look at this data more deeply.
Okay.
Did that help?
Yeah, as a
Thank you.
parent, it always kind of felt like they missed an hour and now they're being counted for a whole day. So I don't know that parents,
That's something that would be really good for us
Yeah.
to communicate, and I don't know if we've really communicated that very clearly, so that's perfect, thank you.
I'm guilty of getting that letter for school absences and sports so I mean, you looked at it and you're like, well, we just missed an hour out of the day. So we do probably need to communicate that that you recognize that.
Okay, perfect.
So,
I just want to say, our goal, just so that we're really clear, our goal is that if a student does need to go to an appointment, that they leave shortly before the appointment and that they return to school. Because that's not always the case. And unfortunately, we really need to be encouraging people to be there as much as they can, knowing that we need to be respectful of situations like that.
Yeah.
So.
I just think education's good with parents on that. So, are we unified across the school district? Do our high schools, do our middle schools look the same on this new program? Like, if you're late to school every day at South, it's gonna look the same at Central.
Yes, and that's one of the things that we're working very hard to look at, to do, and that's one of the reasons we went out to each building, and we'll be adjusting our system as we go. But we're trying to use the same language across all buildings. We changed some of the language on when you count something unexcused or excused, so that way there's more consistency there. We kind of have some back codes that help us make sure that we're consistent. So yeah, we're always looking and making sure, because families don't want to be confused. If they have an elementary school student, they want to have the same kind of process at the middle school, at the high school, and sometimes our students go to 2 different schools at the high school in a single day, and we want to make sure that we're consistent there.
And I think that's awesome.
Jim, do you have one?
Yeah, I had a couple. If you could go back to the slide that had the steps based on percentages. I guess a note I made as I was looking through that, it seems like the chronic absenteeism is a huge challenge. Yeah, this slide here. I remember looking through our building report cards at our retreat, and there was a definite correlation between the level of chronic absenteeism and performance in the school. But I guess when I look at this, we're sending a letter when they've become chronic, and then we actually contact them when they're, I'm thinking that we should be contacting them before they become chronic and trying to get in front of that quicker.
And one of the things that happens is that schools do have conversations with families, you know, when we've seen kind of a pattern start to increase. One of the reasons that we kind of went with this process is that when you think about tiered supports, you kind of think about what is that lowest level of information and lowest level of input that a school can do. So a letter is something that doesn't take a lot of energies from the school, but for families that get that letter and say, oh, I need to be thinking about my attendance. On the back of the letter is actually how you can get in Skyward and find your attendance. And so that's kind of that first push to say, you know what, we're a little concerned about your attendance. Also, we're doing this at the beginning of the school year all the way through. And so at the very beginning of the year, they may become chronically absent, like right now, like the first 4 weeks of school. We started sending letters at the 9-week mark because mathematically, students can be chronically absent very quickly with just 1 or 2 days of school at the beginning of the school year. So we wanted to be cognizant and respectful of the families to make sure we didn't start bombarding them with letters if there really wasn't a concern. But once you kind of get to that 9-week mark and you're looking at the number of days that a student might be absent, you're starting to build those patterns. So if we saw a student was chronically absent beforehand, the buildings had that information and they could start making phone calls. They could look and say, okay, have we seen a pattern like this before? Do we need to go ahead and make that call? At any point in time, a building can go ahead and make the call. But we decided the letter was kind of that first line of defense, and then that second one, that takes a little bit more energy. It was that phone call when we start to see it starts, that first kind of level didn't change the pattern. Then we go to the phone call, and then when we don't see it at the phone call, we really need to go to that more intensive kind of input of resource to the meeting.
So help me understand, if they're chronically absent at the end of the first 9 weeks, as we get more time in attendance, do they no longer become chronically absent?
Correct.
So
Yep.
we're
So one
a
of the
moving target all the time?
It's a moving target, and we have never looked at it, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but we've never really looked at it from that perspective of a moving target. So every single week, we basically have our system look at each individual student's attendance data, look at the number of days that we've had so far in the school year, calculate the percentage of how much that student has been absent. If they are absent more than 10% of the time, it becomes part of a spreadsheet. And then what the principals can do is that over time, a kid might show up there on week 7 and never be on there again as chronically absent because they were sick. That happens. But if we saw that week 7 they were on there, then we saw week 8 they went up to 12%, and week 9 they went up to 14%, and it keeps going up. Okay, we have a pattern of behavior that's really going to draw the attention of the principal and their team. But if we see it declining, we go, okay, sometimes things happen in life. There may be an out-of-town funeral. There may have been something that took place, but that really isn't a pattern of chronic absenteeism. We're looking for that student that is chronically absent, and we're seeing this pattern of being gone over and over that 10%. So yes, a student can be on there at 9 weeks and maybe not be chronically absent for many, many weeks, and then pop back up on the chronically absent list, and so then they look at it again and say, what are we seeing happening?
I commend you for looking at this. This is something, I think it even goes out into future employment and things
Yes.
like that. And I know employers definitely want employees there because
One of
we're
the
challenged by that as well.
other pieces of research talks about the fact that, students that are chronically absent in school, it impacts their entire life. They not building the habits for jobs, maybe not being able to, to access some of the things that they would have if they would have finished high school, or if they, would have had some of those greater skill sets that they needed. So yes, it does impact and causes a ripple effect through their whole lives.
I would like to respond to your question because I had similar concerns when I saw the percents. And I said, okay, wait a minute. And what I realized is in week 1, if a student misses one day, they're 20% absent. By the end of the next week, they're still 10% absent, still chronically absent. By the end of the next week, if they miss another day, still chronically absent. And so that moving target, when they explained that to me, that helped. But the other thing is, this is the first time that we have tried to have a more proactive approach. And I'm really proud that we've created a system, thank you to Michelle Forney at MIS, that will actually track the data for us, and that we have a department that's willing to kind of go out on the edge and approach this differently, knowing that at the end of the year, we will look at these cuts and say, do those need to be adjusted? Because this is our maiden voyage. We're going to do the best that we can, and our whole goal is to try to get the word out. We need your child in school for your child to learn, and for us to have more proactive relationships and conversations with families rather than ending up in a truancy court situation. So I appreciate what you said because that was my first response too.
That's good.
Is there a point, and who would talk to the child? I mean, is there a point where at your upper levels, you sit down with the child and explain this, and who would do that?
Of course. So that's kind of depend upon the building and the relationship with that student. I know that when I was an assistant principal, I sat down many a times, with a student, and it may be just best for the assistant principal and the student to talk and start to say, okay, I understand why I'm not doing so well in class. And so that might be the easy approach. Or it may be like an elementary student. The elementary student needs to be there, and the parents, because the parents may be the reason there. So I think it kind of depends. But yeah, students are involved in this process really from the beginning, because they're going to be able to be the ones that kind of tell us what's happening and why they're not in school. So yeah, it's critical that the parent is involved. And the student, excuse me.
Bonnie?
Do you have any records from last year, if there's any patterns that run with the kid at all, or is that something?
Actually, we do have patterns. We have some longitudinal data where we've looked at truancy over the years, but actually we can pull out data and look at it from that lens. There are some things that we put into place right before COVID hit, where we were really starting to think about chronic absenteeism. And so we had some measures in there, but we didn't have the robust system of data analysis that we have right now. And I think that's what's really changed the way that we can tackle this, because you have to have the data, because you have to see the patterns. You have to see, is the student increasing, is it decreasing, and what's making a difference. If we waited to the end just to look at chronic absenteeism, that doesn't help us. We have to be looking at it the whole way along. And also, just looking at truancy, unexcused absences, doesn't help us, because there are students every single year that were chronically absent, but because it was excused every time, we never had the conversations that we needed to have as deeply. Conversations were had, but probably not with a systematic approach. We're trying to put the systematic approach in.
Yeah, that sounds good. I have another question. It's on the bottom box. District team collaborates with the family, focusing on barriers. I think this is really good. Do the parents come to, or is this new, or do you go visit the home and you can see a lot more stuff, be able to understand what's going on or not?
And really, this is kind of new for us. Really, we had kind of given this over to the Truancy Review Board before, and so it kind of was at that level. We really didn't have this district approach. The buildings, I will tell you, they bend over backwards. They pick up every rock and look up every intervention they can find to try to help support a family. They get community members in there. We have mental health, we have social workers, we have counselors. They go to the home and say, hey, you need to be in school right now. All of those things are happening, but sometimes for families, sometimes it may be, and I hate to say this, but sometimes it may be a little bit of a disconnect between the school and the family. And so if there's a way that we can have a more neutral party at the district, be able to facilitate those conversations, let's jump in there and do that, because the power is at the building. That's where the solution's going to happen. But if we can help that conversation at the district level, so this is new for us, and we'll be trying out our very first kind of families here just in the very near future.
Okay. Any others? Do you have any? Okay.
You were talking about a period where you have, someone might be gone for a week or what have you, but homework is sent home with them, but that's still an absence that's not too different than an athlete or someone going off to band, even though they may be back in a day or 2 days. So how do you distinguish between the two as far as what's acceptable, not acceptable? And then as a part B to that, if you see someone that's going towards this truancy issue, using whatever regression analysis that you want to use, is there an opportunity to transfer them over to possibly remote learning?
Right now, we don't have the option for them to go over to remote learning. We would look, though, to say, is a virtual school environment something that we want to look at? With Salina Virtual, we have that opportunity at semester. Oftentimes, when we have families that there's a barrier there of why they can't physically be in school, our schools do a lot to look at that and to try to say, is there another kind of option? Now that we have Salina Virtual Academy, we do have that, Salina Virtual Innovation Academy, we do have that option. We haven't utilized it as much as a fluid kind of in and out, but that's something that we need to look at. What kind of flexibilities do we have now with that? repeat your second question?
The first question.
Okay,
That
thank
was
you.
the second. The first one was on homework being sent home for the student.
So one of the things that, kind of some safeguards that we have into play when for student athletes, for individuals that are going to be gone on a field trip, is that, you also have that kind of extra set of eyes from that coach. We have eligibility kind of requirements, things like that, that kind of help us in the sense that, yes, is that student being gone from school for a school-related absence? Yes, but we have not, the state does not recognize that as a reason to count a student as chronically absent, because the family and the school is making that decision that that student is eligible to go be part of that activity. In regards to students and being absent, if they're excused or unexcused absences, our teachers work with them and try to make sure that they have everything that they need. We do have some things in our handbook that kind of give the number of days that a student can make up assignments. And so that's one of the things that if we had that parent meeting or that student attendance meeting, that they would look at ways of, okay, you're a student that has some medical fragility there, and you may not be at school each and every day. So what can we do to make sure that when you're gone, we have the best thing to be available for you? And that's where Google Classroom and some of the, we've had some teachers that have, recorded themselves on swivel, or students take notes and send notes to their friend that's at home. There's all kinds of technology things that are going on behind the scenes that I think are helping students that must be gone.
Any other questions? Then thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Next on the agenda is the site council presentation with Ms. Exline.
Well, get ready to be entertained. Each year, Lisa Peters and I go out to every single site council in the district, and we present just a district update. And that district update includes enrollment trends, it includes information about budget, it includes just updates that I want to give. And so I think we have 3 buildings left. But I wanted to share with you, I won't do the entire presentation because much of this information you've already seen, but I wanted you to have a feel for what we were sharing and for you to know that this presentation is available, the PowerPoint is available on our website, so that parents that maybe aren't on a site council can see that. Those site council meetings are also open meetings, and so anybody in the buildings is welcome to come to those. We actually did 3 yesterday, so we were on a roll. So we'll see what I remember today. The first thing that we do is we go over just our enrollment. It is important for people to understand how large our organization is. We are one of the largest employers in Saline County, and that we really have a huge economic impact on this community and an impact on the community stability. So we start there. One thing that I would point out to you is when we did this, we used last year's 9/20 number, September 20 count, and at that point we were 57.9 free and reduced lunch eligible. Right now we are above 60, and we have about 50%, a little over 50% of our students are eligible for free lunch. Interestingly enough, I did a little research for a patron yesterday and found out that in 1992, we were 34%. So pretty significant increase there. But we're above 50% free. We talk about the programs that we offer to make sure that people understand that we are birth through adult programming and that we are the sponsoring district for the Central Kansas Cooperative in Education. We talk about the 18 to 21-year-old programs, Project Search and Transitions, the way that we adults can earn a diploma, and the way that we try to provide family stability for our families that really are needing support through Partners for Success. That program is out at the Adult Education Center, and you know about that it is a way for people that have gone through the judicial system to learn employment skills. And then we also talk about Heartland Early Education Center and make sure that people know that we have a very strong presence in early childhood in the community. One of the points that I always make is that the majority of brain development happens between birth and age 5. And so those early formative years are critical to setting the trajectory for school success. And then as you heard Mrs. Rector talk about, those early years in elementary school really set the path for reading success, which opens doors academically for sure. The strategic plan, you know about the strategic plan. I share how we had multiple community-based meetings. We met with over 1,000 people to get input, and that from that was born a new vision and mission statement. One of the questions that I'm often asked in the community is, where are the academics in those goals? And so I am very direct on where the academics are in those goals and share with them that communication goal really is about the state standards of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And our critical thinking goal really is about the application and transfer of skills. What we want is students that aren't just learning the basics, but they're learning those basics and they're able to apply. I probably could have slid the reading, speaking, writing, and listening underneath that critical thinking as well, but strong academic focus here and high level. When we were listening to the community, you'll remember we had a lot of conversation about it's not just being able to answer multiple choice questions, it's being able to transfer learning, because the students that are leaving us will enter jobs that don't exist, and they will change fields multiple times. So that flexibility of knowledge, that flexibility of thinking. The other piece that I think is critical here is being able to weigh multiple resources and determine what is an accurate resource, what might be a biased resource, how do I bring those together to make a judgment, and how do I engage in civil conversations when disagreements arise. Enter social emotional skills. So our third goal is social emotional, and when we talk about that, I just share with them that our goal here is to make sure that we are helping develop students that when they leave us, that they have the skills that will allow them to keep a job, maintain positive relationships, maintain positive personal boundaries, those things that tend to get, that when we were talking to employers in Salina, these are the things that sometimes get in the way of people staying employed as adults. And so this idea of, I really know what my strengths are, I can manage myself, I can make good decisions and respond appropriately to peer pressure, that really is that social emotional goal, okay? So a nice balance of academic and social emotional, both critical for post-secondary success. We talk about the best place to learn and what we offer to make that happen. And then I've been giving them an update on accreditation. To remind you, we received full accreditation on August 9th, and there are a couple celebrations that I share with them. So I want to share specifically with you the 91.4% graduation rate. Our all students did have a 5% increase. Special education students had a 7% increase over the last 5 years to be at 83%, free lunch 6% to be at 85%, and reduced lunch to be at 4% to be at 92%. Yes?
Sometimes you hear people say, well, they've lowered their standards because they wanted to make their graduation rate go up.
Oh, no, we've added a lot of support. What we've done at the secondary level, and I can't say enough good about what our secondary staff is doing. They have added credit recovery, they have added unit recovery, they have staff identifying, here are the specific pieces of information that the student doesn't know. If they can learn this, we can move on. They are really working with students to master the content. So it is not a matter of lowering standards. And if anybody goes into our high school classrooms and thinks that the standards are low and it looks at what we're asking kids to write and what we're asking kids to read, those standards are high. I see it in my own house. Okay, then I share post-secondary planning, and I think that some of these you've not seen, so I am going to go through these. We have gotten so much more specific on our post-secondary planning. More intentional. I actually met with South High students last week, and one of the things that one of the young ladies shared with me is the power of Zello, which is our career exploration program. And that she said that that is really helping her know who she is and where her strengths lie and possible career fields. And so I think when you see that we have 46% increase in the last 5 years in students earning credentials for high demand, high wage jobs, that really is incredible. Those students can leave our doors and walk into a job and make great wages. Now, whether they're going to do that for the rest of their life or whether they're going to do that as a stepping stone to another career, but that is something that they will take with them and that gives them power in the job market. We have 4 times as many credentials being earned in the last 5-year period as we did when we started, so that's a nice increase. And our career and technical education enrollment has gone up 20% in 1 year. That is, what we're seeing is students are really interested in health science, and we're seeing a huge boom in welding. And when you think about 2 career fields that there are many, many jobs available here in Saline County, those 2. So 20% increase in 1 year, great news. We also added 6 high-demand, high-wage pathways for our students. Those are aligned, as we talked about when the 2014 bond issue went into place. Those are aligned with the career fields that are available here in Salina and that are here in Kansas. And so 6 additional pathways. A pathway is simply a series of courses. So I take an introductory class and I like it, and I take a technical level class and I like it, and then I take an application level class. That is a pathway, okay? I do want to say to you that we have had a 251% increase in pathway completion. What that tells me is we're doing a better job of getting students to know where their interests lie. I always tell a story from my own home. I have 2 college-age students. One of my college-age students did complete a pathway. The other tried a little bit of every single pathway. Either way is okay. We're not asking students to choose a career. What we're asking them to do is learn about themselves. What works, what fits, what doesn't fit, okay? So, but a 251% increase in pathway completion. That's really a celebration. 110 new dual credit offerings. That is something that parents have been really interested in these last 2 slides. So that is, those classes, many of them are available for free, and the goal is that students are able to take those classes when they still have support of parents and high school staff to support that academic success, and then also the work experience. Building Bridges happened last week, and we are continuing to try to forge relationships with business and industry so that we can have high-quality job shadow, high-quality internships. Early childhood, I talk a little bit about the expansion of early childhood. We talk about the staffing challenges that we're facing. And we also point out the things that we're doing to try to solve that. Partnerships with Saline Area Tech to get child development associates in place. And we're looking at trying to add that at the high school. The great news is if a student were to earn one of those, then they could get employed at Heartland, and Heartland will help pay for their education. So creative partnerships to try to support students. Families are really interested in that kind of information when we've been presenting to them. We talk about how we're responding to needs, those things you know. We go over enrollment data. You can see that declining enrollment trend that we've had. Our bricks and mortar enrollment is up this year for the first time in years. So that's good news. The enrollment study, we share with them that enrollment study that we did and that we had an extensive presentation for you. And then Lisa Peters goes over budget. We talk about the base aid for student excellence and how that funds our general fund. We share a mill levy comparison. You can see that our mill levy has gone down. It's actually the lowest that it's been in over 20 years. And Lisa, we got the final numbers today. Do you remember 1 point?
Yes, I think it's down 1.478
That sounds right.
mils.
Okay. So these numbers are a little off because we didn't have the final numbers yet, but we are down 1.478 mils. You can see the mill level, the mill history. And then Lisa goes over for them where funding goes in our school district. There's a lot of times where people say you should have 100% going into instruction. And so we have a lengthy discussion about what is student support. That's our counselors, that's our social workers. Those are people that are critical to success in the classroom, and that I think our teachers would tell you really support students that are needing support and allow them to do their jobs more effectively. Instructional support would be our media specialists, our professional development program. So we go through that with everyone so that they understand that 90.5% of our budget directly does support students, and then the additional pieces really are more indirect supports. Then we review the federal ESSER dollars. We feel like we need to do that because last year we asked them for input on how to spend those dollars. So this year we're talking about, here's how we used your input to create our plan to spend those federal ESSER dollars that we have to have spent by September of 2024. And then I just finish up with looking forward. I talked to them very quickly about our need for staff and encourage them to send people our way. So for anyone listening, we will be flexible. We are looking for people who would be great with children and young people and have positions for paraprofessionals. We have positions that are still open in maintenance and operations food service. So we're always looking for great people that are positive for students. We talk about building bridges and forging those partnerships with business and industry. And then I share, here's how you can advocate for public schools. And I want to talk about this slide just briefly. We talk about school funding and the need to advocate for the Consumer Price Index moving forward. When that law went into place, the CPI was about 1.4%, the average was. Now it's sitting more like 5%. But with inflation, Lisa shares the difference in what we have paid for just 2 truckloads of paper in 1 year's time, $43,000 to $80,000. So just that, the exploding costs, and so we really do need that CPI. We talk about funding the law for special education excess cost. We discuss early childhood and the critical importance of funding there. And then I address the voucher situation, and we do educate all students regardless of their income, regardless of their readiness, regardless of their disability. So we have a conversation about that. We also have a conversation about mental health and the need for us to be able to identify students who are needing supports in that area and how that can happen. And then our thankfulness for the mental health grant and our hope that that will continue. That is the grant that provides our mental health liaisons in our schools that work directly with the mental health center. They really speed up the process to get students who are needing mental health supports and remove barriers for families. And so we are thankful for that. And then we talk a little bit about curriculum and the need for our educators who understand child development, who understand content, to be the ones driving the curriculum, and for us to continue to be willing to partner with parents when there are concerns and to address things on an individual basis, but that the trained professionals need to be the ones driving that. And then finally, we talk about opportunities for students to get college credit while they're still in high school through Excel and CTE. One of the things that we would really like to see is that expand to entry-level general education courses, and we would really like to see that expand to the technical classes at K-State Salina. That's right here in our backyard. They are not eligible for those funds because they're a 4-year institution. But similar kinds of classes, when you look at their unmanned aircraft courses and how just the booming nature of that field. So then I finish up with, together we do great things in Salina, and we talk about all the partnerships that we have and what that's allowed us to do here in Salina Public Schools, and just how thankful we are for this community, our business partners, our nonprofit partners, and just those community groups that come out and they advocate for great things for our students and for Salina as a whole. So, questions?
Have you in general been pleased with the turnout and questions and response?
Yes, you know what, I have been. We've had some great conversations about how can we get more parents to have this information. Overwhelmingly positive response about the conversations. And last night, for example, one of the comments was, I really wish that all parents could sit down in a small group and engage in this conversation with you. And I agree, because I think, there are so many positive things, and if we can get people to really understand all of the opportunities that are here for their students, this is a wonderful place. We also had somebody tell us last night, just a little testimonial about their own students and how well prepared that they have been in their experience as they've been going through our school system, and just how positive they were about the teaching staff, the support staff. So yes, overall, I think absolutely. I've had no negative interactions, none.
Anybody else? Nope. Thank you very much, then. Let's see. Next on the agenda, then, is school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. The dates of importance include this Thursday, day after tomorrow, the legislative luncheon at the Smoky Hill Education Service Center, where all our, some of our local representatives come and talk to us about the legislature and listen to us about what we think should happen. Then there's the KASB annual conference in Wichita, which several of us are going to. So let's start with Dr. Bandry down here.
Great, thank you. First off, I want to thank you folks here for sticking with us all this time. It's great that you adults have brought the young people out, and I realize the wheels of society don't always turn as exciting as they might, but it's a good thing. So I appreciate you all being here and sticking with us. Good job. I had the opportunity to participate earlier this week in mock interviews at the medical internship classes at Salina South. They're doing over 4 times. Yesterday was my first time this year, but it's great to interact with young people, to have a chance to work with, in this case, Dr. Kipp and a couple of teachers as we engage with students. So good opportunity with the mock interviews. Ms. Kamian talked about the You Make a Difference Awards. I was able to give 2 of those away at South, and it's just fun to wander the halls. In Mr. Maldonado's case, we actually pulled him away from a small group lesson and gave the award, and we left, and after Dr. Kipp and I were out of the way, the students applauded. So that's great. It's just really exciting to see that energy, and I so valued the chance to do those. And I'll just say from Mr. Maldonado, I knew him when he was in college. So to have somebody who I've worked with through college and into teaching and coaching, it's neat to see all the dots connect. I promised last month I was going to give a report this month on the Health and Wellness Committee, but due to poor health, it got canceled. So perhaps we'll try again sometime, and we'll see what happens. These things will happen. And I mentioned last month the new little libraries around town. My wife and I, 2 weekends ago now, spent a good chunk of a day going out and restocking some of those libraries and doing little structural repairs. And it's nice to know that books are leaving those, which is the whole purpose. So many of those, most of them are on district property, but there's some part of the community. It's just a good thing as somebody who values reading. So,
Thank you. Mr. Gardner.
Heartland is still needing help, so anybody who's looking, they've got some excited people that are on the board, but they really do need people to come in and to support them. Grandparents are welcome as well, so anything that we can do to help them, that's the feeder program. That's where it starts. And so the sooner we can get in there and make a difference, the more we're going to see that payoff in the end. And you guys might also check and see if there's a button you can get for how long you've actually been off your phones, so.
Okay, Mr. Fletcher.
No report.
Okay, Ms. Gossip.
I too attended the mock interviews at South and was very impressed with the kiddos and their interviewing skills. It was really fun to be there. I've attended an equity council meeting, the board of control meeting, where they too are still needing lots of people, so we have lots of para openings. I attended the SPS chat session at Huesner. You did a very nice job, and there was a pretty good attendance. I don't know if those were teachers or parents, you probably do, but it was really nice. It was pretty well attended, and it was enjoyable to see everybody. And then building bridges at Central High School, I was a little late to that, but that also looked like that had a great turnout.
Mr. Grant?
Nothing to report.
Ms. Schamberger?
Yes, I attended the open house at the South Meadow, enjoyed the concerts there, and also at the SPS chat of the social emotional learning, which was quite interesting to see all the videos of what's going on at Huesner. Then I attended the building bridges, and Curtis Stevens did a great job organizing that. That was amazing. I went to a bunch of the breakout sessions and listened to the employers because they stated they needed employees who would work hard and be on work on time, which we talked about, would communicate well, and there was a business called Repco. I'd never heard of it. It's been in Salina since 1940. They export around the world. You guys probably know all about this, do you? I was kind of amazed. And then another employer takes their interns on a tour of Salina businesses so that they would know the opportunities that are in our city. And I thought that was good to give them a tour because there's a lot of things they probably don't know, what kind of businesses are there. And then the culinary arts, the students did great snacks. That was, especially since I don't cook very well. Anyway, I don't like to cook anyway. Then I went to the South High Play Friday, and they did an excellent job there as well. But I've also been doing some research, which is, it's kind of good. Last month we got this book. I don't know if everybody, every school board member got it. It's called The Giving Kids a Fighting Chance with School Choice. So I thought, well, I might as well read this because sometimes we're doing a good job here at USD 305. Well, we can always do better or find some other, ideas. So for some reason, they kept talking about Florida. And I was kind of amazed with this. Florida was one of the worst states in the nation with student achievement in 1998. 12% of the low-income students could read proficiently in the fourth grade. But in 2019, Florida was ranked number 3 in the National Assessment of Education Progress. Low-income students are ranked number 1 in fourth grade reading and math, as are Hispanic students. And black students are ranked number 5 in the fourth grade reading and fourth grade math. I don't know what Florida was doing, but I thought that is quite amazing for the minorities to be able to read. And we're all working on it, because if we know how to read and do our math, we're going to be better citizens. I also saw a couple of graphs that were kind of interesting, because it was like in 1962, the educational achievement was up here, and then all of a sudden it started dropping. And also the violent behavior, their chart was that, and they started raising in 1962. So I was wondering what happened in 1962, which was 60 years ago. But that was when the school-sponsored prayers were ruled illegal by the Supreme Court. So did the teacher-initiated prayers in school actually affect the academic achievement of students? Did prayer actually help put a lid on violent behavior? I don't know. But I may look younger than I am, but I was in the 5th grade in 1962 when all this happened. And I remember every morning we would stand up, do the flag salute, and then we would pray, and we say, God bless our country, bless our schools, and bless our families. That was it. We'd ask him to bless those three things. The biggest offenses that we had when I was in school was that somebody putting gum under the seats, the lockers were messy, or they talked too much, because I got in trouble for talking too much. But there was only one kid in my class that came from a broken home. Who can say if the prayers really helped? I don't know if we can say, but we can say that it's time that we can all pray for our schools, pray for the teachers, pray for the kids, pray for the families, and pray for our city, because prayer changes things. Thank you.
Thank you. I attended the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and I attended the Chamber Board meeting. I also attended the South Middle Open House, at least part of it, the musical parts, and got to eat some pizza. And I attended the Salina Public Schools chat, and I especially liked the second step video that we got to see with the little girl taking deep breaths so that she did not pound her classmate who had just taken her answer and used it as his. And I just loved those little lungs. They had a little cartoon of lungs, breathing in, breathing out. And anyway, I wanted to take it home and share it with my family members. So that may not be all I did, but that's all I can think of. So let's go on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, I want to give you a few details about, excuse me, our 920 count. I shared a few things from the podium, but I want you to know that our students who qualify for free lunch is up 16.7% from last year. 51.8% of our students qualify for free lunch. And as you may recall, there's a new category where they directly certify students for free lunch, which means they don't have to fill out paperwork. That's all that means. And that new category is Medicaid services. 1,797 of our students qualified for free lunch in that way, okay? 1,797. Career and technical education, I talked about how we really are doing great things there. Our full-time equivalent in career and tech ed classes is up 19%. So that's a pretty significant increase again this year. And all other categories were consistent with the prior year, which is usually what we see. Now, when we do the budget, we use kind of the weightings from the prior year to determine what we're going to do for that budget. Keep in mind that the enrollment numbers, the base is that we use the higher of the previous 2 years' enrollment for the base, okay? But the weightings are this year. So we may be in a situation where, with that significant increase in free lunch, where we will have to republish the budget to handle that increase in at-risk weighting. We won't know until we have the audited numbers. That's good news for us, but I just want to alert you that those numbers were significantly up from where we had been, okay? I want to update you just real quickly on the SPS chat. That's the only other thing that I'll talk about tonight. I met with the students at South High, and I always love those meetings. They are so hungry for leadership opportunities, incredibly articulate, incredibly on point with what they identify as ways that we can help them grow and learn more. They were very appreciative of our career exploration efforts, and they are very appreciative of the kinds of classes that are offered and the kinds of opportunities that are available to them in our comprehensive high schools. They started naming things that they liked about school, and it was classes, and it was activities, and it was clubs, and it was just really fun to listen to their positivity. The one thing that they said that I thought was really just teenagers, is that they feel like we do a really good job of communicating with their families. They want the same information to come directly to them, so they're not getting it from their parents, which I think that, that's just teenagers. So that was interesting, but they were so positive about the staff at South High and the education they're getting. Yes.
How are those students chosen? How big's the group and how are they
Okay,
chosen?
what I do is I have them just pick a representative group of students. So I had, and we keep it small because we feed them lunch, and they're more likely to talk if it's small. So we had 12 students that were invited and 12 that came, and they were some in no activities, some in a lot of activities, some with really strong grades, some who struggle in school. It was just a real mix of students. And it is fascinating to watch how respectful they are to each other. It really is amazing to me when you see our students interact and, oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you have something to say? And, a lot of that kind of communication happening in the room and making sure that all voices are heard. It's fun. So, okay, and then I wanted to talk just briefly about the social emotional session. We remember that we are doing social emotional learning, and that really is a process for students to understand and manage their emotions. It is a way for them to set and achieve positive goals for themselves, a way for them to feel and show empathy for others, and then maintaining and establishing appropriate relationships and making really good, responsible decisions. The research is clear that schools that engage in social emotional learning have decreased behavior incidents, increased academic achievement. So it is a direct impact on academic achievement because students can spend more time learning when those basic needs are met. And those basic needs include safety and security and belonging, and that does precede achievement. And so we talked a little bit about that. I want to say a thank you to Erica Moyer, Lori Munsell, and Curtis Stevens, who joined me on a panel, and they were able to add so much more specificity than I would have ever been able to add. And the teachers at Huesner that were willing to allow us to videotape them, they had some marvelous examples of things that were happening right in our classrooms. So,
Thank you. There's the Heartland Early Education update that's in the packet, and we're going to go on to an executive session for personnel. How much time do we need for that?
We should be okay with 5 minutes. It'll be quick.
5 minutes. Anyone have a motion for us? Mr. Grant?
Madam President, I move the Board of Education go into executive session at 7:20 for 5 minutes for the purpose of discussing the contractual obligations of non-elected personnel and their rights under the negotiated agreement. Because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 7:25 in the SEC room.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, let's say Dr. Bandry seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. We will be in executive session for 5 minutes. We are back in session, and we have a motion left over from that executive session.
Madam President, I move that the board approve Amy Frost's request for extended leave through the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year.
Do I have a second? Dr. Boundary seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried, 7-0. Thank you, and I think we are ready to adjourn, are we? So motion to adjourn? Someone want to make that? Mr. Grant, move to adjourn. Someone second? Mr. Gardner, second. All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.